Thank you for listening to this 5-minute broadcast of No Apologies, an apologetic ministry dedicated to help strengthen the born-again child of God's faith in the Scriptures. The Bible says, "For after that in the wisdom of God, the world by wisdom knew not God." It's amazing to see how smart the world thinks it is sometimes.
Oh, a wise guy, huh?
Many high-minded intellectual stuff shirts out there think that the rejection of what their creator said is a sign of their intelligence. Well, actually, rejection of what the creator said is not a sign of a big brain, but according to the creator of the brain, rejecting what he said was a sign of a dirty heart.
What's the big idea, egghead?
The Bible says, because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Generally, I do pretty well ignoring all the clickbait on MSN's homepage when I go to log into my email account, but this one caught my eye over this past Easter weekend. It was a slideshow entitled The Truth About Jesus Christ. Yeah! Oh really? The truth, huh? Well, I couldn't resist, so I clicked to see what new garbage MSN had to give me. Here's part of what it says on the first page.
The Bible tells us a certain amount about his life, but very few historical sources exist from the time he was alive. This means it is a challenge for secular historians to find information about Jesus outside of religious texts.
Did you catch the underlying message? The Bible is a religious text and therefore not historically reliable. What these self-deluded egotists can't or won't admit is that the Bible, especially the New Testament, where Christ's 4 biographies are found, is the most historically reliable ancient text of all time. Now, any reader of the Bible, lost or saved, can easily see that the Bible isn't as much as a religious book as it is a history book. It mentions real cities, real people mentioned in secular histories, chronological events, genealogies, etc. It mentions things as if they really happened, as a matter-of-fact sort of style. The writers wrote as if they wanted you to believe what they were writing about. Historians, or unbiased historians, look at two major indicators to determine whether or not a document is historically accurate. And not surprisingly, the Bible passes both tests with flying colors. 1. If a historical document was copied enough times, it's a good indication that people back then considered them historically accurate, which in turn lends to the idea that the events they wrote about actually took place. For example, the historian Suetonius has 200 copies or manuscripts, and his writings are considered historically accurate by most historians. The historian Josephus is considered historically accurate, and his writings have roughly 130 manuscripts. The historian Tacitus has only 3 manuscripts. You got any idea how many manuscripts the New Testament has? In Greek alone, we have over 5,000 manuscripts. According to the manuscript test, it's 4,500% more reliable than Josephus, Suetonius, or Tacitus. The second thing historians look at is the time gap between the earliest manuscript and the events being written about. The idea is that as more time separates the earliest manuscript and the event, the less likely those events are historical due to the telephone game effect. Suetonius, Josephus, and Tacitus have a gap of 800 to 1,000 years between the events and the earliest surviving manuscripts. In contrast, the earliest manuscript of the book of John in the New Testament has only a gap of 30 years. Most of the New Testament is found in the Chester Beatty Papyri and is only 150 years after the New Testament was completed. According to the gap test, the New Testament is 600% more historically reliable than the other writers, none of which any historian doubts their historicity. There are other tests to see whether a document is reliable, such as if it is a personal letter, whether or not it was intended for small audiences, written in an unrefined or crass manner, and contains odd details. Sounds a lot like Paul, Peter, James, and John, doesn't it?
Certainly!
In the words of lost scholars Bruce Metzger and Bart Ehrman about contrasting the New Testament with other ancient works, quote, "The textual critic of the New Testament is embarrassed by a wealth of material," unquote. The Bible is a religious book? It's not historically accurate? We can't know a lot about Jesus Christ from the Bible? Sorry, you don't sound very scholarly to me, MSN webpage builders. You sound to me more like...
We're not ordinary people. We're morons.
Don't ask me to apologize. This is No Apologies Apologetics.
A wise guy, eh? And you like that?